We want to have a look at some more questions now where we have to differentiate in exponential functions. But what we want to have a look at is a situation where we have to use, in this case, the product rule. So all the in questions in 2, we have to use the product rule here. So remember, our product rule is if we've got a function that is u times v, then the derivative would be deriving the first function, multiplying by the second, plus the first function and multiply by the derivative of the second. So in this case, x cubed is our first function, e to the 3x is our second function. So the derivative of this function would be the derivative of the first function at 3x squared and times the second function, doesn't derive yet. Then plus the first function, which would be x cubed, times the derivative of e to the 3x, which would be 3 e to the 3x. So you see the 3's just been put out the front there, so it's just been cleaned up a little bit already. So it would have been x cubed times 3 e to the 3x, and it's just been written in that form where it's 3x cubed times e to the 3x. It's just been rearranged. This time our function is y, and our first function 2x plus 1 in brackets times e to the minus x. So we derive our first function there, which would just be a derivative of 2x. The 1 would cancel out, so that's why we get 2e to the minus x. And then we find we have the first leave the first function times by the derivative of e to the minus x, which would just be minus e to the minus x. So that's where the minus comes in there, and we just get minus the two like x plus 1 in brackets and e to the minus x. So in question 3, our first function is the x squared plus 1 x plus 1, 8 times e to the 2x, so the derivative of x squared plus x plus 1 is the 2x plus 1. And we have the second function staying by itself, and then derivative of e to the 2x is 2 e to the 2x, so the 2 gets placed out the front, and the bracket stays the same because that's the first function, and we have the 2e to the 2x is the derivative of e to the 2x. So the next one, x e to the minus 2x, so the derivative of x is just 1. So that's why we don't see anything, we just got the second function e to the 2x, because really it's just 1 times e to the 2x minus 2x. And then derivative of e to the minus 2x would be minus 2 e to the 2x, so there's your minus 2 e to the 2x, and that's multiplied by the first function, which is x. So we can, if we apply the product rule, we shouldn't have too many problems. So for e function, e minus x is our first function, so it becomes minus e to the minus x, and we've got x cubed. That stays the same. So the order doesn't matter. If you wrote it as minus x cubed e to the minus x, that's still okay. Just depends on which way you want to write it. Like in this situation where I've written derivative of e to the 3 power of 3 becomes 3x squared, so I've written that out the front, e to the minus x. Again, you could write that 3 times e to the minus x times x squared. The order doesn't really matter, so because it's all multiplication. This time x cubed minus x e to the minus 2x, so just be careful because that's one term and that's one term there, so we derive e to the x cubed, sorry, which becomes just 3x squared. So don't think you've got to, don't try and read too much in it. I've seen like answers where this one where people trying to put the product rule into this one and that one, and it's not, it's just two separate terms, so we just derive that one straight out, so 3x squared. But then it's minus, and notice I've got the bracket here because I'm going to apply the product rule because it's got two terms, two products, two terms, and multiplying and get a product here. So derivative of the first term would be just 1 times the e to the 2x. And notice the minus has stayed out the front and we've got it in brackets. And then e to the 2x becomes 2 e to the 2x, so that's why it's plus 2x e to the 2x. Just be careful to make sure you keep the brackets there because it's got a negative out the front. If you want to expand it out, you can put that as negative and that one as negative, but we've got to make sure we keep the negatives in there. Question 3 here, again, we've just got to be really careful that we don't try and read too much into a lot of these ones. That's just e to the 2x plus 3, so derivative of the function times e to the function. So derivative of 2x plus 3 is 2, and with function would stay the same there. Same in b, either the function, so derive the function, so x squared is 2x minus 2, and that's just then times e to the function of x, so we're not changing them at all. So try not to read too much into it. 3 times e to the minus 3x, so we're just going to derive, keep the 3 out the front, and we'd get 3 times minus 3x squared. Well, that's the derivative of minus x cubed, and then it's times the e to the minus x cubed, and then once we clean it up, it's going to give us minus 9x squared and e to the minus x cubed. So try and, again, the main problem I see with people doing these questions is they just try and read too much in it and try and do too much in terms of a product rule or anything when it's not there, or forget the product rule that's there when it needs to be. So 2e to the minus is 3x minus 1, derive 3x minus 1 is 3, multiply that by the 2, and then times e to the 3x minus 1. So that's what we need to do with those questions. So again, two separate terms with this one, so we need to derive them separately. So that's our y. Derivative of e to the 3x minus 1 would be 3, because that's the derivative of 3x minus 1, times e to the function. And then e to the 4x plus 2, derive 4x plus 2 is just 4. That's times e to the function. This one, be really careful, because that's e to the minus x times x to the power of a half. Again, remember your indices laws. So when you derive it, now we're going to have to do the product rule, because that'll be minus e to the minus x times x to the power of a half, and then plus e to the power of minus x times a half x to the power of minus a half. So this one is going to use the product rule, because you've got one function times another. So if we want to clean it up, we can leave it like that. That's not a problem. Or we can be very clever and get e to the minus x times the square root of x, and the e to the minus x over times a half, so that's why the 2 is on the bottom. X to the power of minus a half goes on the bottom there. We could probably even clean it up a little bit more and have e to the x on the bottom as well. Square root of x over e to the x, because that's how we can clean it up there. So just be really careful, making sure you recognise whether it's going to be a product rule or not a product rule, as the question may be.